Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to League Racing TV here for round number 2 of the Esports Masters League Console 1. My name is, of course, Michael Edwards. Going to be taking you through the action here tonight as we head to Melbourne. It is time for the Australian Grand Prix, but before we get into all that, first and foremost, shout out to our sponsors at Rowan Printworks 3D. Massive thank you for sponsoring the Esports Masters League this year. And of course, let's have a little look at the track of which we will be racing at here tonight. Of course, we are in Melbourne. It is 5.2 kilometers, 3.2 miles in length, 14 corners, 3 DRS zones, 1 down the start finish straight, 1 down in towards turn number 3, and of course 1 down in towards turn number 11. It's going to be interesting to see how these guys navigate the tricky left right chicane of course turn number 9 and 10, high speed corner, and of course a decent bit of what could potentially be some side-by-side action there as well. Time will tell, of course, if we are going to get some side-by-side action there, as I actually believe that sorry, it's 4 DRS zones. I think my track map is a little bit out of date, but it is all good. So ladies and gentlemen, let's have a look at the lineup here tonight. For FGE, we have Brent and T. Powis. Let me know if I've absolutely butchered your name. I hope not. But yeah, let me know if I butchered it. They are, of course, driving for FGE. For LR, we have Turbo Toms and Leo Lopez there in the Mercedes for LR. CPI come through with Francesco Lago and, of course, Urpec in the McLaren F1 car. In the Scuderia Ferraris, we have GT10s, Philly and Mad Dogs representing GT10 in the Scuderias. The Aston Martin pairing of Plex and Addy, of course, representing EVE here tonight. OVR in the Alpines with OVR Nico and OVR Thomas. And then, of course, in the Williams, we have the VMV pairing of Clen and Rizzo. And then, of course, for FRT in the Racing Bulls, the Visa Car Shop Racing Bulls, we have Harvey and Lucan, or Lucan. You let me know if I say which one was correct, and now you have to let me know. Then, of course, in the Saubers, we have Neverlast Racing's Spicer and even Kanai there in the Saubers for Neverlast Racing, and of course IRT in the Haas F1 car, and of course they are fielding a team of IRT Simon and Phil here tonight. Of course, looking at the standings from post-race number 1, which of course last week at the Bahrain Grand Prix, as you can see, Neverlast Racing takes the lead in the championship, 27 points for NLR, with Optimum Velocity Racing OVR there in second place on 24. GT10 with a good showing, currently in third on 21 points. CPI in fourth place with 20 points, so very close between those 4 teams at the top end, and a bit of a gap to FRT there in fifth on 12 points. 11 points for IRT Esports, 10 points for VMV Esports. Vicio Racing currently on 6 points in 8th place. Then, of course, False Group Esports in 9th on 4 points. And then, of course, LR Legacy Racing down there at the back at the moment in 10th place with no points on the board as it currently stands. But we are in the middle of qualifying as we got some drivers just beginning their first flying laps. We're currently on board with Brent, as he is just coming through the first sector split. So let's get the telemetry up, and in fact he has actually invalidated on his lap, so we'll try and go on board with a driver who hasn't invalidated, who is on a flying lap right now. We got Nico in the middle sector, and it's looking like a decent lap for the OVR man, heading down in towards turn number 11, braking, locking up the front right tyre 4th gear, the gear of choice there for Nico. Now through the final sector, carrying the speed through 12, now breaking down in towards turn 13, 3rd gear, getting the car rotated, and now keeping it nice and tight, opening up on the exit of the final corner. DRS wide open, Thomas here with a 15.3, and what will Nico do? Nico will go quicker than his teammate by a 10th of a second. It's a 15.2 for Nico. IRT Phil splitting the two OVR drivers, so good going there from him. Turbo Tom's now coming to the line for LR, and he will cross the line. It's currently P4 as Francesco Lago for CPI coming through with a 15 flat, so good going there from Francesco, and of course Erpek there popping into P3 with a 15.2, 5 thousandths of a second slower than OVR Nico. So I believe Simon potentially is on a cooldown lap. He's not using his ERS as you would expect. And of course Leo Lopez also on a cooldown lap, as it looks like Tia Paulos is on a flying lap, so we'll stay on board with the man in the Red Bull as he comes through the first sector split. It's going to be a 26.4 in the first sector, not the quickest that we've seen so far in the first sector, so it'll be interesting to see where he is going to come out. Of course his teammate Brent, he had to get a lap time on the board, so unfortunately it's not going the way that they planned. A 43.9 in the middle sector, smooth through turns 9 and 10, the left right chicane, and running down now in towards the break-in for turn 12. Sorry, turn 11. I'm going through turn 12 right now, and then of course into turn number 13, and through the final corner. What is Paulos going to do as he heads to the line? It's going to be a 15.8, so yeah, not near the top end right now for Paulos, but a lot of time left out there on circuit, that is for sure. As we got Plex on the outlap, we got Andy's on the outlap, we have Glenn on the outlap, of course Spicer, Ethan Knight and Harvey not going to be able to set lap time. Same with Lucan as well, as I'm not quite sure, was there any qualifying bans perhaps for any of the teams out there? Let's have a little look, guys. Of course, yes, there is a qualifying ban for FRT here tonight, and of course looking for any more qualifying bans. Okay, so no qualifying bans for anyone else other than FRT, but there is a team qualifying ban awarded to NLR, so that's why both NLR drivers of course are not qualifying here tonight. So Lucan, the only driver I think has actually absolutely binned it on his lap, as Brent is on a flying lap right now, coming through the first sector through turn 4, running very wide, and that is going to be his lap invalidated immediately. On board now with Andy's, as he is on a flyer. That was purple in the middle sector, but I believe that's purple for his own delta, not necessarily for the entire session. As we come through now the final sector, and let's see what Andy's is going to do for EVE. As I've been informed that the FRT have a double qualifying ban. Okay, say less. As we just seen there, Andy's there popping up into P7, a 15.4 for the EVE man. So there we go. So everyone that is currently at the session having to serve qualifying bans here in round number 2, and that's of course for FRT and Never Last Racing. So it's going to be interesting to see if those guys are going to be able to come through the field from the back of the grid. Of course, Australia, you can overtake around here. Of course, the key overtaking opportunities down in towards turn number 1, turn number 3, and of course into the turn 9-10 chicane, and of course down in towards turn number 11. On board right now with Leo Lopez as he opens DRS on the run down in towards turn number 3. Let's see what Leo is going to do. Locks up the front right just a little bit, but nothing too bad there whatsoever. But runs too wide on the exit of turn number 4, and that is the lap invalidated for him. IRT Simon right now, I believe on a flying lap also, as he's heading down in towards the turn number 11 right-hander, and now needs to hook up turns number 12 and 13 to get a nice line through turn number 14, which would see him finally get a lap time on the board. And is he going to be up there with his teammate? Of course, Phil right now currently up in P4 for IRT, and his teammate does join him up there in P5. So IRT, Phil and Simon doing a good job there for the IRT pairing. Plex, I think, has been having issues with his connection. Of course, I did see that he did have to rejoin the lobby, so hopefully he'll be able to get out there and get a lap on the board at some point. Paulos coming through to get his lap underway, and in fact we're going to go on a full flying lap with Paulos here, and let us hope that there is no invalidation. DRS wide open as we run down in towards turn number 1. Looking for the 100-meter board, braking just after it, floating over the curb through turn 1, using a bit of the curb through turns 2, and keeping it all valid there. DRS wide open again on the run down in towards turn number 3. Lock up on the front right tyre, but he gets the car rotated through 3 and through turns 4. Does not run wide through 4, but through 5. A nice little kiss of the inside curve there. First sector split, 26.3 in the first sector, and it's not the quickest that we've seen in the first sector. I mean, we have seen, I think we saw a 26.2 earlier in the first sector, so he's there or thereabouts is Paulus, but this is where we're going to see as 43.7, and as he runs wide on the exit curve of turn number 10, and that's his lap over and done with. And that is going to be an issue for the drivers out there. That turn 9-10 chicane, the fast left right, it's going to be so easy just to take a little bit too much curb, lose the car, or take a poor line on the exit of turn 10, and which you will drift out wide onto that exit curb, pick up needless invalidations or warnings in the race. As Glenn on an out lap as well. Urpek is on a flying lap, so we're going to jump on board with Urpek because he's just getting himself underway, and in fact we are going to go full screen for him, as I believe there is issues going on right now, as several drivers have left the lobby, as Plex was one of them. I'm not sure who the other one was. I have to review the stream and see who was the other drivers. Plex, Urpek invalidated on his run. Okay, so Plex was one of the drivers, and Philly, so GT10 Philly and Plex unfortunately disconnecting from the session. Hopefully they're able to get back in as soon as possible, but yeah, right now Francesco Lago for CPI topping the timings here with a 15 flat out there on a brand new lap. So we're going to stay on board with Francesco Lago to see if he is going to be able to break into the 1:14. He needs to find around about a 10th of a second, and we're going to see if he's able to find that time. Leo Lopez also under pressure to get his lap on the board, because right now, I mean, the drivers that served their qualifying bans, Francesco Lago has invalidated his run. Nico is marginally up in the middle sector, and that is Andy's there going on provisional pole for EVE, getting around about 300ths of a second ahead of Francesco Lago, as Nico now to the line. I believe Thomas just improved on his lap time. Nico does improve on his lap time. He goes ahead of Francesco Lago. So how costly will that invalidation be for the man driving for CPI here tonight? That's going to be the question. Big pressure though on this man, Leo Lopez, just to get a lap time on the board. We got just over 5 minutes remaining in the session. No lap time coming in from himself and Plex, but Plex has been hit with a fair few connection issues, which has unfortunately not helped him. Leo Lopez though does get a lap time on the board, pops up in the P6. incredibly close at the top end of the field. Look at that, 300ths of a second separating the top 3 drivers. Addy's right now currently on provisional pole. It's a 15.065, 4 thousandths of a second ahead of this man in second place, and that's of course OVR Nico on a 15.069. And then of course we got Francesco Lago for CPI there in third on a 15.097. Very close between these 3 drivers, and of course very close as well in the mid pack as well. Like, I mean, Erpek on a 15.2, and he's only 35 thousandths of a second ahead of Philly in P8, and of course he's got about a tenth and a half going down to Glenn there in 11th. So very, very congested in the mid pack. So any bit of time you can find will help you out massively and gain you a few positions. Erpek though for CPI about to get himself underway here, as we got just under 4 minutes to go in the session. Runs too deep through turns 1 and gets onto the curb in at turn 2, and that's his lap over and done with before it's even started. As Turbo Tom's on a cooldown lap, we got Philly just getting his lap underway. A big slide through turn number 1, took a little bit too much of that inside curb, the back end stepping out marginally on the GT10 man, and that definitely would have cost him just a little bit of time. But let's see if we can find any through turns 3 and 4 and 5, as we look to see what the first sector split is going to be for Philly here. Is he up? He's a thousandth of a second up. Good through turn number 6 there, as we come through turns number 7 and now in towards turn number 8. DRS wide open as we head towards the left right chicane of 9 and 10. Really half a tenth up on his lap time. Nicely done through the chicane. Remember that half a tenth will gain him up ahead of Erpek right now. If he can carry it through, if he can find a bit more time, he might be able to challenge Thomas there for P4 and maybe even get himself up there with the likes of Francesco Lago, Nico and Addy's. But a big rear lock up there coming through the penultimate corner, and I think, yep, Philly into the pit lane. I think that rear end lock up cost the Ferrari, the GT10 driver, massively right there. As I believe Phil will be the first man to get a lap time on the bullets. We got around about 2 minutes to go now in the session, and all the cars flooding out of the pit lane right now. Phil's going to want to hope that they don't impede him or get in the way of his lap or potentially put him off. But through turns 1 and 2 goes IRT Phil. DRS wide open on the rundown in towards turn number 3, looking for the braking, looking to not run too deep, but keeps it nice and tight there does Phil. Now through turn number 4, does not want to drift out wide. They were very close there to the track limits for Phil. Not ideal if you are looking to try and get the most out of this lap time, but Phil is around about a 10th up on his lap. So right now it's looking good for Phil. He's right there on Thomas's lap time. If he can find just a little bit more in the middle and final sector, he could maybe get a front row position here, and he's over a 10th up. So there we go. As long as he can carry this through the rest of the lap, he will get himself ahead of OVR Thomas here. But can Phil set his sights on the front row? Can he set his sights on provisional pole for the time being? Addy's is on a lap, Nico is on a lap, Francesco Lago on an out lap, is about to just actually start his flying lap, so we'll see how he gets on. But Phil around the final corner for IRT. It is an improvement so far. Has he got enough? And he goes up to P3 ahead of Francesco Lago, as Addy's and Nico have invalidated their runs, and they just about got enough time to get around to do another lap. But Francesco Lago now for the first sector, 27 thousandths of a second up in sector 1, so close to the track limits there through turns number 6, but he keeps it all valid. DRS wide open now as we head down to the middle sector split, and of course that turn 9, 10 left right chicane, and it's a 10th and a half up for Francesco Lago. Lovely over the curb there through turn 10, and hopefully Francesco Lago can keep himself composed in the final sectors, as Thomas has him retired from the session. Not good for him. Currently down in P5. He's left the door open for other drivers to jump him. But Francesco Lago through the final corner. DRS wide open. Can the CPI man retake provisional pole position? As he comes to the line, it's going to be a 14.9 from Francesco Lago. CPI on provisional pole position. As it currently stands, Nico marginally up in the first sector. Let's see what the middle sector is going to say for OVR Nico. He's only a little bit up on his time, and that's an invalidation there for Nico, so that's his lap over and done with. Erpek down in the first sector, and I think potentially with him and Leo has invalidated, so we'll see what Erpek can do. Erpek, purple middle sector, as who was that that just crossed the line? That was Plex, so he did manage to get a lap time in the end, did EVE Plex, and it was good enough for P7. What could have been for him if he didn't have the connection issues throughout qualifying? He might have been able to get a few more laps in and of course get himself further up the order. But Erpek now through the final corner, looking to gain any positions that he can, and DRS is wide open for Erpek. It's going to be a CPI front row. I think it is. I think he did just manage to get P2 in the end, and he did. It is CPI locking out the front row. Francesco Lago and Erpek there for the CPI team, locking out the front row, both in the 14s. Fantastic result for them. So Francesco Lago will be starting from pole position with his teammate Erpek alongside him in P2. EVE Andy's in P3 with Nico there in P4, Phil in P5, Thomas in P6. Plex gets a lap time in the end in P7 with Leo Lopez in 8th. Philly for GT10 in 9th, and then of course Turbo Thomas for LR round out the top 10. Outside the top 10 we have Simon, Glenn, Brent, Mad Dogs, Paulas, Rizzo, Lucan, Spicer, Harvey, and even Kanai. Of course, the bottom 4 drivers were, of course, the drivers that wasn't able to qualify due to qualifying bans for their teams. But guys, we will be back in just a moment as we go to a short break, and of course we will be back once the lobby has been reset and ready to go. We will be back, guys, in just a moment's time. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, as we are waiting for the lobby to get underway here for the race in Australia. Of course, looking at the qualifying results again, it was a CPI front row lockout. Francesco Lago on pole position, getting that all-important pole position point for CPI. And of course, his teammate being right alongside of him, locking out the front row for the McLaren pairing in CPI. Addies there for EVE, of course, going to be starting from third with OVR's Nico in fourth place, with IRT Phil in fifth, with OVR Thomas in sixth place. EVE's Plex did manage to get himself a lap time in the end, as did Leo Lopez, and it was a good lap time from the pair round because it put him 7th and 8th. What could have been if they were able to get some laps on the board a little bit earlier in the session. Of course, Plex had some connection issues. Hopefully we won't be seeing connection issues for him in the race. And of course, Leo Lopez just wasn't able to string a lap together for a long time. He just kept invalidating, and of course that is not going to fill him with a lot of confidence going into the race, getting that many invalidations in qualifying, because of course the track limits here can be a little bit brutal, they can be a little bit treacherous, and of course a 3-second time penalty is something that you definitely don't want to see. And of course in terms of the remaining drivers inside the top 10, we had GT10s Philly and Turbo Toms for LR. Of course, looking at the lineup again tonight, Brent and Paulus there for FGE, Turbo Toms and Leo Lopez for LR, Francesco Lago and Erpek for CPI, Philly and Mad Dogs for GT10, Plex and Addies for EVE, Nico and Thomas for OVR, Clen and Rizzo for VMV, FRT's Harvey and Lucan right there, and then of course Spicer and Ivan Knai for NLR, and finally Simon and Phil for IRT. And of course they're the drivers that will be making sure that they can do the best for their team. Quick reminder of the team standings going into tonight. Remember, CPI would have picked up an extra point for the pole position, so they would be tied with GT10 right now on 21 points. But that's how the standings are looking. Again, we can have a little look at the points paying positions as well for the race course. 22 points for the win, 18 points for second, 15 for third, 12 points for fourth, and then it goes down in increments of 1 all the way down to 15th place, which gets you 1 singular point. And of course there's a point for pole position as well as the fastest lap of the race. So a maximum that a team can get out of a race weekend is of course 42 points, if my math is correct. Yep, 42 points the maximum that a team can get out of a race weekend. And we're going to see CPI, they got the pole position point. Are they going to be able to hold on to their front row lockout and have a 1-2 finish? We're about to find out, because we're going to go to those 5 red lights to get underway here in Melbourne. Round number 2, lights out, and we are underway. And it looks like a very good start there for Francesco Lago, able to hold on to the race lead, and Erpek able to hold on side. And I believe I just saw a bit of front wing fly off someone's car through turn number 1, so there's been a little bit of contact there in the midfield. Trying to keep an eye out on who potentially has a bit of end plate missing. I think that is actually one of the Mercedes has an end plate missing. Is that Leo Lopez with a bit of wing damage? No, it's not. It's a Turbo Toms. I thought I saw a bit of wing damage here on one of the Mercedes. I could be wrong, but through lap 1, other than that small little bit of wing damage that we saw, I'm not seeing any major issues, as both of the NLR pairing able to get through on Polas, as Polas unset those hard combat tyres, losing out to these medium runners early on. And here comes Harvey, and Harvey kind of boxed in there between Ethan Knai and Polas, so unable to get the move done for Harvey. FRT and NLR have a lot of work to do to try and get themselves through the order. Big lockup up ahead from Leo Lopez, looking on board from IRT Phil's point of view right there. Interesting split in the strategy. Of course, Phil, Philly, Toms, Paulus and Simon all going for a set of the hard compound tyres. And I think Simon has had a big drop through the field, going from P11 down to the back of the field. Paulas in the pit says, oh, Leo Lopez getting right underneath the rear wing of Plex here for P6 as we begin lap number 2. And I think yeah, a bit of decent going on right there between these two. Maybe Plex having connection issues once again to the lobby host, which is not ideal for him. But at the front, CPI doing exactly what they need to do. They are controlling in the early stages as Francesco Lago just stretching his legs a little bit out in front to his teammate, but his teammate making sure that he is that rear gunner to Francesco Lago that CPI of course are going to need in this race, as Addies, Nico and Thomas, they are going to be trying their best to upset the CPI team here tonight. Of course, everyone's still within a DRS train all the way down to Rizzo down in 18th place, and of course Simon there in 19th, 2 seconds back. I don't know what happened to him off the start. Maybe he was the wing damage that we saw in the early phases. Doesn't look like any wing damage on him, but Paulas making an early pit stop, as now we're starting to see some things change as Leo Lopez, guess who on OVR Thomas, up in the P5 goes Leo Lopez for LR, getting the job done on OVR, and up into P5 goes the Mercedes, as Plex is also going to catch Thomas in napping, and I didn't even see that coming through. But yep, Plex up into P6 now ahead of Thomas, and Thomas now has been overtaken by not only Leo Lopez but also EVE Plex as well. So not good for OVR, as Thomas seems to be struggling a little bit on lap number 3, and he has IRT Phil behind him. He doesn't want that Phil to get ahead of him, that is for sure, as the CPI parent have switched positions. Obviously with DRS being activated, it would make sense for those two to work together as a team to not hold each other up. But look at this brilliant run from IRT Phil, as he's going to move to the inside of Thomas as they go wheel to wheel in towards turn number 11, and it is going to be Thomas that comes out on top and holds on to that position. But look at that, Phil had a little peek down the inside as we are about to get on to lap number 4 of 29 here tonight. Erpep on the fastest lap of the race, so right now the fastest lap point going the way of CPI. On board with Plex right now as he's on the back of Leo Lopez, DRS wide open, closing in. Potentially could have been close enough to go for the lunge down the inside if he used a little bit of battery, but decided against it. Meanwhile, in the end, Phil still putting the pressure on Thomas here for P7, and he has to because he's got Philly and Turbo Toms in behind him. Brent having a bit of a quiet race so far in 11th. Mad Dogs there in 12th, getting up 2 positions early on, as Luke and Spicer, Ethan Knai and Harvey all doing good off the start. Now they're climbing positions as well, as there goes Phil past Thomas, and of course we have Plex getting through on Leo Lopez as well, as it looks like Thomas just been overtaken again by Philly. So what's going on with Thomas, as Thomas is actually going to be overtaken by Turbo Toms there, who gets onto the grass on the inside. Turbo Toms getting through. Oh, contact there, as the front left tyre of Thomas makes contact with the rear right tyre of Turbo Toms, and Turbo Toms goes for a spin. Thomas drops down the order, and I think definite wing damage there on the Alpine for OVR. Into the pits he goes, but I mean, I'm not sure what was going on there with Thomas. He just seems there must be like some sort of issue on his car at this stage in the race. Maybe a little bit of side pod or rear wing damage, hopefully not, because that could be heartbreaking for the OVR man. But into the pits he goes, set a hard compound tyres, lap 5 of 29. It's his teammate Nico doing a very good job, currently up in P4. The top 4 have broken away from the rest of the field, 2.5 seconds back to Plex, who is currently under pressure from Leo Lopez. So this is EVE versus LR. Lopez going to have a look around the outside into the fast left right chicane, and that is going to open the door for Phil to have a go at Plex as well, and Phil does get the job done. And what we got here is Philly trying to make this move around the outside of Plex, but unable to secure that position is Philly. She's going to settle in behind the EVE man for the time being. But Phil, brilliant opportunistic move to get that job done on Plex. Leo Lopez getting the move done as well. Up into P5 and P6 respectfully for the pair of them. As Nico putting the pressure on Addies, as CPI just controlling the race at the moment. They know that they can just trade positions back and forth with DRS, and that's exactly what we've been seeing so far from them. As we've got a yellow flag in the final sector, and that is Turbo Toms, who seems to have dropped it out the final corner. Heartbreak for the LR man. Of course, last week he didn't have a great race, and this week it's looking like it's going to be a similar story for him. Thomas into the pit lane, and I'm not too sure why Thomas is back in the pits. Maybe just go medium to the end perhaps. But Nico all over the back of Addies for the final podium position. As you see the CPI pairing switching again up front as Francesco Lago gets back ahead of Urpec. And he saw a little bit of a slide there from Addies. That's just going to compromise him. He could have maybe had a little go at the CPI driver down in towards turn number 11. But that little slide on the exit at 10, not ideal for EVE Addies, and Nico is looking like he's the quicker of these two at this moment in time. He looks a bit more comfortable, does Nico, and he gets a fantastic line, but the back end stepping out on Nico out of the final corner as they run down in towards turn number 1. I think if Nico's back end doesn't step out on him, he puts in a challenge in towards turn number 1 on Addies, but this time he's got to sit in behind and just wait for his opportunity. Meanwhile, Leo Lopez on the back of IRT Phil for P5 in this race. You've seen in behind as well, Philly and Plex battling it out for 7th and 8th. As you got Mad Dogs for GT10 in 9th place, just ahead of Brent in 10th place. And of course, Lucan, Spicer, Ethan Knai trying to come back through the field from their qualifying bands, as they are currently 11th, 12th and 13th. Harvey has had a bit of an instant, I think, at some point, because he's dropped down to 16th. As again, you see the CPI switching positions at the front. Playing this team game very strategically is CPI, but one of them is going to be hung out to dry when it comes to the pit stop phases, because Addies and Nico would be able to follow whoever pits first, and whoever pits first could have a decent undercut on the second driver. So right now, even though CPI seem to be controlling this, as look at this now, Nico down the inside in the final corner on Addies. Addies getting all out of shape in the final corner, and that's going to allow Nico through and up into P3. And now this is going to be interesting, because I think Nico just has a little bit better pace than Addies at the moment. He's a little bit more comfortable with the circuit, and Nico could potentially be that guy who could get the run that he needs to maybe split these two CPI drivers. But what I was going to say is CPI working cohesively as a unit right now. They're not fighting each other, they're just using DRS, maintaining their 1-2. But as it currently stands, that pit stop phase, one of them is going to be hung out to dry. And the question is, are they going to be able to come back through after to get that 1-2 finish if for the likes of, let's say, Francesco Lago was the one to make the initial pit stop as he retakes the race lead. Nico and Addies could follow him through into the pit lane, as Phil ahead of Leo Lopez, as it looked like Philly was looking to get the move done on Leo Lopez as well. Lap 8 of 29. The mediums will begin to fall away at this stage versus the hard compound tyres, so we should be seeing that gap between Addies and Phil begin to come down in the corners. But of course, DRS and Nico's into the pit, so Nico has blinked first. The OVR man has opted to go for the undercut nice and early. Spicer in the pits as well, and that could be a big call for Neverlast Racing, as Spicer could potentially get the jump on several drivers ahead of him on track. So it'll be very interesting, as Philly all over the back of Leo Lopez. Leo Lopez going to look around the outside of Phil. Phil's going to let him have it for the time being. And Leo Lopez up into P4, 3.5 seconds the gap between Lopez and Addies. So they've lost a second just by battling in the first sector alone. And that is the issue when it comes to battling around this circuit. You do lose a lot of time. But I think for Phil and Philly, they need to get through on Lopez right now, because their tyres are going to be a decent bit better right now than Leo Lopez, but there goes Phil. Oh, as Lopez tried to get back into the slipstream of IRT. Philly was trying to follow Phil through. Contact made, Philly in the wall. And is that wing damage on the Scuderia Ferrari? I think it possibly is. And yes, it is. The front left end plate is off on the GT10 driver's car. And I don't know that one right there. Francesco Lago into the pit lane. I think what we just saw there, we saw, of course, Phil making a lovely little overtake. Leo Lopez obviously trying to get back into the slipstream of Phil, moves over, and you got Philly there trying to make sure that he can follow IRT Phil through. Contact made, Philly in the wall for GT10, having to make an early pit stop, lap 10 of 29. He's gone from the hards to a set of mediums. He will have the title advantage at this stage versus the cars around him, but heartbreak for him now, because not only has he come out behind, not only would he have to change the front wing and fall down the order, but he's come out behind the likes of Spicer, Ivan Kanai, Brent, Lucan. As there goes Lopez back through on IRT. Phil Plex is just there in the background as well. 3.13 seconds the gap between Lopez and Addies here in this race, and 4.5 seconds between Francesco Lago and NLR Spicer. And Nico as well for OVR did make that undercut work. He is ahead of the CPI man, but the CPI man's going to try and battle him in towards turn number 11, and Nico able to hold on there. Francesco Lago had a little peek down the inside, but wasn't able to make it stick. The only drivers that have stayed out thus far has been IRT Phil on the hard compound tyres, and of course EVE Plex, who is going a little bit deeper than the rest of the field on this opening stint. And of course Simon has also stayed out there on his set of hard compound tyres as well. And of course Simon for IRT could really help Phil out for the latter stages of this race, because if IRT Simon is able to hold up, battle, make it difficult for Nico, Francesco Lago, and of course these guys in behind, it's going to help Phil once Phil is on the set of the mediums at the end of the race. So Phil's going to be hoping that his teammate Simon can do the business and hold up the likes of Nico and Francesco Lago in this race. Urpek though in making in going just a little bit longer, making this pit stop just a little bit later, lost over 2 seconds to Francesco Lago and OVR Nico in this race. He still has Addies in behind him, and here comes Addies actually with DRS, with the overspeed to the outside line before the break-in, and there we go. Addies up into a net P3, but he does ride on that inside curve just a little bit, so that could have unsettled him as Plex is into the pits. Right now, Spicer, Spicer, Ethan Kanai and Lucan doing very well on their undercut strategy, because look at this, Spicer effectively is in a, I want to say a net P5 at the moment, because there comes Plex out of the pit lane. Spicer has got ahead of him, Brent's got ahead of him, and even Kanai is now going to be all over the back of him as Urpek and Addies trading positions once again. Lucan having a look to the outside. Oh, as Lopez goes deep on the brakes, hits the rear of Ivan Kanai, and they are still battling. I'm going to stay on board with Lucan for the time being, as Leo Lopez there on the inside line, able to get that, but a little bit too hot on the brakes there for the LR man, as he almost absolutely rear ends the NLR man off track. But this will be where Ethan Kanai is going to be able to get him back quite easily with DRS, and back up into P10 goes Ethan Kanai. Now though, we are going to see what Spicer's pace is like versus the likes of Urpek and Addies. The gap is around 3 seconds. I think Spicer though, in terms of his pace, he might be able to close up, but is he going to be able to close enough to offset the DRS advantage? That's going to be the issue. As Plex is sizing up Brent here for P8. Even Kanai looking to get himself back in the rhythm after the contact with Leo Lopez moments ago on the previous lap. Leo Lopez on the back of Lucan there for P11. Of course, Brent and Plex now side by side through turn number 3. In fact, Plex there dropping down the order, ghosting momentarily. That's allowed Ethan Kanai through up into P9, and now Ethan Kanai can maybe get the move done on Brent and potentially go ahead to work with his teammate Spicer up in front, because Lucan for FRT and Plex will still need to overtake Brent. And you got to imagine that NLR as a pairing will be working together quite decently as well as we go through the turns 9 and 10 chicane. A lovely little run there for Ethan Kanai. He's going to try to look for the inside line. Does not have the ERS battery though to make it work. Brent holds on, and in fact, look at that, Plex even further to the inside line than even Kanai. And Plex trying to get that move done as Lucan had a little peek, and he's got Lopez on his inside, turns to the outside for the penultimate corner, and oh, Lucan's around. Did Lucan just nip a little too much of that inside curb? Because I don't think there was any contact between the pair of them. FRT falling down the order. Lucan back down to P15 as Leo Lopez able to hold on to P11. And yeah, it's a tough day for FRT. NLR to win well though on the recovery up the grid, as it looks like right now we got a tale of 3 different races going on right now. You got this battle, the battle for the final podium position between Urpek and Addies, and then of course you got Phil, who could potentially get involved in this at the last stages of this race. You got the battle for the race lead between Nico and Francesco Lago, OVR versus CPI in this one. And then you got this battle that's going on for the best of the rest. And you got Spicer, you got Brent, you got Ethan Klein, you got Plex, you got Leo Lopez, all battling it out. And Phil, I think, will come into this battle, but he's going to have much fresher medium tyres. So he may be able to just get the job done on these guys as quickly as possible and try and get himself onto the back of the legs of Addies and Urpek later in this race. Lap 15 of 29 though. It is IRT Phil leading the way, and heartbreak for Phil at this moment in time, because Simon now unfortunately for him has been overtaken by both Urpek and Addies. He did manage to hold them up just a little bit, but not enough. And now Phil's going to be hoping that Simon can do the job for this pack, because if Phil can come out in a decent spot compared to this pack right now, the battle for P7 on track between Spicer, Brent, Ethan Klein, Lopez and Plex, if Simon can help out Phil enough, Phil's going to have a fantastic final stint on the set of the medium compound tyres, and it's going to be able to fly through the field. But Brent gets through on Spicer. Spicer, I think, is just going to be happy to let this go for now and then come back at him on the following lap. But we need Spicer is going to need both himself and Ethan Klein to be pretty close to the back of Brent, so they can both try to get through with DRS, work together as a unit and try to get the job done on Brent as quickly as possible. Brent doing a good job though, holding off the NLR pairing for the time being. Leo Lopez though looks to be a man on a mission right now. Of course, he does have a time penalty to his name. Right now they'll lose him 1 spot to EVE Plex in this race, as there goes Lopez trying it around the outside of Ethan Kanai, and he's still on the inside for turn number 4. A little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact between the pair of them, and Lopez splits the NLR drivers once again. Lopez up into P9 as Plex is just going to be sitting around waiting to see what happens. He'll pick his opportunities wisely, as Brent now with DRS disadvantage. Spicer's going to be able to fly past him, and Spicer actually opting against it, sticking behind, as he's got Leo Lopez trying it on him as well. Plex has managed to get through on Ethan Kanai, and on the run down in towards turn number 11 you're going to see a double NLR overtake as Spicer down the inside of Brent, Ethan Kanai on the inside of Plex, and it's a double Nevertheless Racing overtake there in towards turn number 11. Synchronized moves from Spicer and Ivan Knai, as Brent and Leo Lopez now going to do battle for P8 and 9 as Simon is into the pits for IRT. Urpek got a 3-second time penalty. 3-second time penalty for Urpek, and that is huge for him because now Addies, with no penalty to his name, is going to be comfortable and sitting in behind Urpek now for the rest of this race because he can get the jump on him with the penalties. Of course, he would rather win it on track, but he will have that advantage. What Urpek's going to have to worry about is if Phil is able to get back in towards the end of this race, and if Phil is going to be able to drag along the likes of Spicer, Brent, even Knai, Flex. Like, are these guys going to get dragged along as we're about to see a change for the Net Race League perhaps, as Francesco Lago and Nico closing in on each other, and Nico able to hold on as Brent is on the grass actually. So Brent falling down the order, and he's now out of this train and in a precarious position because he's just going to lose time, hemorrhage time left, right and centre to this train because they will have a DRS. Now we're going to see where Phil's going to come out. Phil in the pit lane, pitting off a set of those hard compound tyres, going to put on a set of the medium compound tyres to the end of this race now. Where is the IRT man going to come out? He's going to come out behind this train, and in fact he could come out well down the order actually, Phil, as yeah, Phil's going to come out all the way in P15, and he could get overtaken by Rizzo. So a big task ahead of IRT Phil. I did not expect him to come that far down the order, but a big task ahead for the IRT man as he looks to try and recover his way to some good solid top 10 points here in Australia. Up at the front though, you're seeing Nico and Francesco Lago trading positions. Here comes Urpek. Urpek's going to follow Francesco Lago through. So the battling that Francesco Lago and Nico have done has actually brought the likes of Addies and Urpek back into this, and now Urpek crucially is in P2. He has a 3-second time penalty, but what this is right now is CPI now has the advantage because Urpek can hold up the back of the pack as Turbo Tom's in the pit lane retires from the race. Heartbreak for the LR man as CPI have a 1-2 out on track. Urpek though with that 3-second time penalty will lose his podium position, but he can play a key role in securing Francesco Lago a race win here for CPI. As Nevertheless Racing on their recovery after surfing the qualifying ban, currently P6 and P7. It will be P5 and P6 obviously with the Leo Lopez penalty, and for Nevertheless Racing that is a very good recovery, but they'll be hoping that they can just maybe get a little bit more out of this race. Of course, the only thing that could really help them out right now would be if there was a safety car to bring everyone back together, and then maybe they can try and get themselves up into the podium positions. But for right now, the best they're looking at is obviously a P5, P6 finish, but they do have Plex all over the back of them, and Plex is going to be able to stick with them, but he's not going to be able to get the overtake done, as Jav in the chat saying time for Francesco Perez. Of course, that is an interesting one because yeah, actually Urpek now 1.5 seconds up the order because Francesco Lago is holding up the likes of Nico and Addies, as Thomas there picks up a 3-second time penalty. So CPI, as I thought it was going to be Urpek doing the job for Francesco Lago to secure him the race win, what we've got here now is Francesco Lago going to be doing the job for Urpek to try and secure a 1-2 for CPI. And it looks like it is going to work thus far, but Nico and Addies, they're going to be using what they've got to try and get this overtake done on Francesco Lago to not allow Urpek to get away, because one of them will be missing out on the podium position. If that does happen, Nico gets through, Addies gets through, Francesco Lago down to P4 in this race. as Ivan Kanai gets through on Leo Lopez, as does Spicer around the outside. Side by side action between Spicer and Lopez, and what a overtake, by Spicer, but contact there with Plex and Leo Lopez. Virtual safety car deployed here on lap 20. My, oh my, oh my. What a overtake there from Spicer on Leo Lopez, but a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact with Plex and Lopez was enough for Lopez to go flying around. Virtual safety car deployed here, lap 20 of 29, as Lopez is into the pit lane. By the way, IRT Phil on his recovery after obviously making this pit stop, he is currently in P11. DRS has been enabled as Lopez into the pit lane, obviously for a front wing change. Fresh set of medium compound tyres there for the LR man, as Phil looks to get this move done on VMV. Glenn, job done there for IRT Phil. And I mean, Phil technically, I mean, he does have the tyres. He's going to be able to get the job done on Brendan Maddox just due to the penalties and obviously the tyre advantage he has anyway. But can Phil get himself involved in this battle with Ivan Kanai, Plex and Spicer? That's going to be the question, as Addies and Nico understand the task right now, understand what CPI were trying to do, and they have now just thrown a spanner in the works at CPI. Urpek now is going to be under pressure because he's 1.3 up the road. He's not 3 seconds up the road. That 3 second time penalty is going to come back to haunt him at this moment in the race. EVE and OVR with a temporary, I think, a temporary truce right now to make sure that CPI do not use their team tactics to get a 1-2 finish here. So that's why I think is going on right now. Ethan Kney and Spicer 5th and 6th for Neverlast Racing, and it's a good recovery for those two drivers starting from the back after serving a qualifying ban. Plex there holding on to P7, and now Phil for IRT has been unleashed now in P8. He has 3.5 seconds to close in the gap to the likes of Ewan Kney, Spicer and Plex. Can Phil get himself a top 5 finish here tonight? Lap 22 of 29, as Francesco Lago going to try to make this move on Addies. Addies going to try to hold it down the inside or turn to the outside, and there, Urpek with this, another 3 second time penalty for Urpek. Urpek now 6 seconds of time penalties to his name, and what that does, if the likes of Nico, Addies and Francesco Lago make it difficult for Urpek, what we're going to see is Urpek potentially could be under threat from the likes of even Klein, Spicer and Plex by the end of this race, if the battling commences between these guys. Lap 23 of 29, Urpek leads the way, 6 seconds of time penalties for the CPI man. OVR Nico currently in P2, ahead of Francesco Lago in P3, and he just got through on EVE Addies there in P4. So as it currently stands, OVR are taking the race win with CPI in second, EVE in third. As Plex and Spicer battling out there side by side, little bit ghosting going on there as Plex around the outside of Spicer. In fact, they are inside each other as they come through turns number 5, and Spicer I think is going to have the better run, and there we go, job done there for Spicer. 8 seconds the gap between Evan Kney and Addy, so maybe like as I said, the only thing that could really throw a spanner in the works for CPI here in terms of Urpek in 4th place is if the likes of Nico, Addies and Francesco Lago actually start battling like crazy with Urpek. Urpek though, he is holding on to the race lead at this moment in the race. Philly is out of the session, not good for Phillies, and yeah, heartbreak for Philly. I mean, it was looking good in the first stint, but after he got that contact early on and had to make that pit stop very early, and obviously he's made the second pit stop since then, his race has been absolutely thrown out the window because he was right there with IRT Phil. Phil got that gap now down to 1.9 seconds on the back of this battle for P5. We have two major battles to keep an eye on right now. The battle for the race win between Urpek, Nico, Francesco Lago and Addies. And then we have the battle for the best of the rest outside basically the top 5 finish for both of the NLR drivers, EVE's Plex and of course IRT Phil, closing in on a set of those medium compound tyres. And I don't know. If there is a late safety car, that would be heartbreak for the likes of Urpek and CPI. But what it will do, it would make the end of this race extra bit spicier. Spicer gets through on his teammate up in the P5 as the Neverlast Racing teammates working together to not lose themselves any time by battling each other. They know the task at hand. They know the only hope that they got is either a safety car or these guys battle like crazy. And here comes Nico. Nico now on Urpek. Urpek, I think, is just going to allow him through. He's going to allow Francesco Lago through, and he's going to try and hold up Addies. So there we go. Urpek is going to try and do the job now for Francesco Lago. Francesco tried to do the job for Urpek earlier in this race, but was unable to keep Nico and Addies behind him. And then, of course, our 3-second time penalty coming through for Urpek, completely throwing any hopes of a CPI 1-2 out of the window, and now is about trying to secure a P1, P4 finish for CPI, and that is the target. Urpek right now, he has the gap on Spicer, so he's not going to drop any further than 4th at this moment in time. But what he needs to do is to make sure they can do everything he can to help Francesco Lago get into the race lead. And he's got to hold Addies in behind him to protect Francesco Lago in the closing stages of this race. Because if Addies gets through, Addies could put a bit of pressure on Francesco Lago to get the second place, get the hot spot going on to the final lap of this race. Well, of course, we are a few laps out. It is lap 26 of 29. Nico for OVR leads the way. Francesco Lago for CPI in second place. Urpek there in the final podium position right now for CPI, but 6 seconds to his name. 6-second time penalty to his name means that EVE's Addies will get that final podium position as Brent and Mad Dogs there picking up 3-second time penalties, and that is Mad Dogs falling down the order. And I think a little bit of side-by-side action, a little bit of a rear end snap for Mad Dogs, and down the order he goes. Lucan, no penalties to his name. He's looking to jump up into the top 10, and Phil is now in this train with Spicer, Plex and even Knai. As Francesco Lago has managed to get himself ahead of Nico. And look at this, here comes Urpek trying to get ahead of Nico in towards turn number 11, and he is going to fight. He is going to battle to try to help his teammate. That is 100%. Addies dropped back a little bit, and of course I think that is down to Urpek using a lot of his battery to try and get the job done on Nico. Nico right now in a CPI sandwich here, as Urpek is doing absolutely everything he can to get Francesco the race victory here for CPI. And that is the kind of run through turns 1 and 2 that Urpek is going to need. He's using his ERS. He's going to look to the outside line as Nico's going to cover the inside line. He's going to hold him up, and there we go. Urpek going to be just having to settle down for now and try again on the next DRS straight. He is underneath the rear wing of Nico, and what this is doing is allowing Francesco Lago to get away, to get clear of Nico. You see the gap now, half a second between Francesco and Nico, and here is Urpek draining his battery to try and go all the way around the outside, and he's going to get ahead. And that is not what Nico and Addies want in this race, because now Urpek will be a mobile chicane for these guys, and he will back him up to give Francesco Lago the race victory. As big snap at the rear end from Urpek as we go through turn number 11, and there you go, you're seeing it, you're seeing the backup tactics there, as Urpek has now basically dropped these guys out of the DRS range on Francesco Lago. And what we're going to see is Nico fly through with DRS, and maybe he's actually going to get challenged at turn 1. So Nico around the outside, a little bit of contact I think there between the pair of them, and Adis is going to come through. Adis up into P2, and Nico there goes through. Erpek lets them both through. He's done his job, and he's held them up sufficiently enough that there's no way back for them now versus Francesco Lago. And I don't know, I think EVE and OVR will definitely be having some words for CPI after this race, but it's a team game, and the question is, did anything that Erpek do cross the line? That will be the question. As Nico able to defend from Erpek, and you see Francesco Lago now 2.7 seconds up the road as Erpek down the inside of Adis, and Adis there has to yield between turns 11 and 12. Adis now net P2, Nico and net P3. There's a, as we're about to come on to the final lap of this race, honestly, so I mean, this battling has actually allowed what's called the likes of Spicer and Plex to close in, but they've not closed in enough. Phil's tyres, I think, have fallen away from him. He's fallen away from this battle, so this battle right now is between these three for the top 5 positions. But if Adis and Nico really do put the battle now to Erpek on this final lap, slow him up enough that the likes of Spicer, maybe even Plex, could get the jump on him. I mean, the battle that Erpek did to get Francesco Lago a race win might come back to bite him, because it could mean that he ends up behind the likes of Spicer, Plex, and loses CPI even more time. But right now, 9 seconds the gap. Plex is through on Spicer. Up in the P5 goes the EVE man, and I mean, as it currently stands, we're going to go to Francesco Lago as he comes around the final corner for the final time. Adis holding on ahead of Nico, but Francesco Lago is going to take victory for CPI here tonight. Adis for EVE, is he going to hold on to P2? Yes, he is, just ahead of Nico there in P3. And Erpek has had a spin. Erpek's had a spin. Oh my god, Erpek's going to fall down the order. Erpek is going to fall all the way down the order. He drops to P8. Erpek at P9. Erpek goes from P4 to P9. We're not sure what happened there with Erpek in the final corner, but he has dropped it somehow and fallen all the way down to P9 in this race. So I was saying, you know, the battling, it could hold him up and he may lose a spot to even Kanai, Plex or Spicer, but dropped it out of the final corner. He loses the spot to Phil and Lucan as well. So CPI, while they do get the race win, it's not the 1-4 finish that they probably would have been eyeing up after that second time penalty came through for Erpek. And it is going to be Francesco Lago for CPI taking victory ahead of EVE Andes in second place. Then of course we got Nico for OVR in P3, EVE Plex in P4, then an NLR NLR 5th and 6th. Brilliant recovery for NLR, and if you are an NLR fan, that's a brilliant recovery for them to get themselves back up into the position that they were. Even Knai, the in-game vote for driver of the day, but it was CPI that took the top step of the podium, and I'm hoping I can get through to the podium celebrations, maybe, potentially. Alright, there we go. Right, so we can go past the podium celebrations and hopefully get to the standings. There we go. The final classifications is Francesco Lago, who takes victory ahead of EVE Andes in second place. OVR Nico in third, with EVE's Plex in fourth place. Even Clay and Spicer, good recovery for Neverlast Racing in 5th and 6th. IRT Phil in 7th, for Lucan there for FRT in 8th. And it looked like I believe Urpek did come through in 9th ahead of Harvey, who would be 10th, and of course Brent, VMV's Clen, and then Rizzo, and then of course Simon, Mad Dogs, Leo Lopez, Philly getting the fastest lap of the race. He would have finished down in 17th place with Urpek. Urpek says he's in 18th, but he's definitely not. Thomas in 17th. I believe Paulus and Urpek have left the session, so their times are a little bit glitched with the rest of the field. But yeah, guys, incredible end to this race. My, oh my, oh my. CPI, it looked like they had everything under control. It did look like they had it all in their hands. And you saw the teamwork that was going on. Francesco Lago was trying to back up the pack to give Urpek the 3-second gap that he needed to hold on to his penalty. But that 3-second time penalty to come through absolutely destroyed it for any hopes of a CPI 1-2 finish. Then it became all about getting Francesco Lago the race win. And he did get Francesco Lago the race win. But at the end, Urpek, I'm not sure if there was contact in the final corner or if he just dropped it. But either way, Urpek falls from grace at the end from what was a guaranteed P4 result. And I believe, so he would have come through in P9. So Urpek had a guaranteed P4 and he dropped it all the way to P9. And in terms of the points, that's a big points gap to drop as well. From P4, 12 points. Loses out 5 points for CPI. And yeah, it's definitely not the best of days at the office at the end for Urpek. But a good recovery there for NLR. Fantastic racing that we saw with Nico Addies and Francesco Lago for the most part. But guys, let's have a look at the calendar to see where we'll be heading to next time out, as we head to Shanghai for round number 3. It is the Chinese Grand Prix next time out in the Esports Masters League. Again, I'd like to say a massive shout out to our sponsors at Ronan Printwork 3D. Appreciate you guys for sponsoring the Esports Masters League. Guys, what a race that was. We'll be back in a week's time. Round number 3 of the championship, the 5th of February. We'll be heading to Shanghai for the Chinese Grand Prix. Until then, guys, my name's been Michael Edwards, and we'll catch you next time here in the Esports Masters League. Until then, it is good night.